So one of the experiences that really stuck out to me in my mission was my second area. I was still serving in the southern part of Madrid, and there was a man that the sisters had found probably about 6 months prior to us starting to teach him. And he'd been with the missionary, or with the sister missionaries, and he'd had all the discussions, and he still proved to be a very devout member of a different congregation, but he also would never tell them he didn't want them to come back. He would always listen, and he was actually doing a really good job of keeping his commitments as well. And when he could, he would come to church, but he would always read, he would pray, and he just never seemed convinced. And after a while, the sisters ended up passing him over to me and to my companion, and we started teaching him as well, and we restarted the lessons. We went back to the beginning, and we were making sure he was reading and that he was praying, and he was doing everything. As far as a person goes, you would expect them to be progressing because of everything that he was doing, but it really looked like he wasn't. But we just weren't ready to give up on him, and he always wanted to come back, and he was always ready to listen. And after a couple of weeks of being with him, the lessons got a little less spiritual and more kind of us bashing and him bashing, and just pulling out the Bible and seeing, who was right and who was wrong. And I remember having a lesson. We were out in this park, and it got pretty out of hand, honestly, and he was yelling at us, and me and my companion were just kind of sitting there, and then we talked back to him, and then he started banging on the table, and some of the people were like, well, you guys need to leave the park, it's pretty late, and you guys are pretty loud. And so we told him, well, it's been really nice, and if you want to, we can meet again. He was like, yes, I'd love to meet again. And I remember me and my companion, we went home, and we did our planning, and we were like, what are we going to do with Joaquin? And I was like, I'm not sure. And he's like, I don't know either. And we honestly felt like we had done everything we could. We'd given him commitments, and like I said, he was doing everything that you would expect him to do to be able to progress. And we kneeled down, and we basically offered just a really fervent and sincere prayer, and we said, Lord, we've done everything that we can. We've tried everything we know, we've used the scriptures, we've tried to teach by the Spirit, and we just don't see him progressing. And we're like, we leave it into your hands. And we went back a couple days later, and it was like meeting with a completely different person. I don't know what had come over him, but it was someone so different and so just completely convinced of it all that I was just astounded by how much he had changed. And he basically just sat there and was like, no, you guys are right. It's like, I've come to the realization that this is true, and that this is true, and that what you've been teaching me is the truth. And he's like, and I don't have problems with it. So we invited him to get baptized. He said, yes, I'll be baptized. And the next time we went back, it was like teaching Joaquin again, and just a bash. And I remember going home, and me and my companion looked at each other, and we were like, what happened? That was the most confusing lesson I've ever had. And we did the exact same thing, and we kneeled down again, and we're like, Lord, we've gone through this, and we can't fight with him anymore. And we were so sincere about it again. And I remember going back, and the exact same thing had happened. And it was like teaching him as a completely new man all over again. And he was so humbled every time we did it that eventually he did end up getting baptized. And I think for him, it was such a great experience, and it took him so long, and it required so much fighting for him to get there, that he's been one of the most faithful baptisms that I ever had while I was there. And they immediately gave him a responsibility, a calling, and it was actually a made-up calling. I think they made him like the assistant elders quorum clerk or something, and his job was to take roll in elders quorum. And I don't even know what else, but he was so serious about it. As people would walk in, he'd be like, hey, what's your name? And he'd write down their names. And he was so serious about it, and he was so committed. And I was just so grateful that he had to go through such a struggle to get there, because since he really valued everything he had a lot more. And he's just starting to give it up now, and I really appreciate it for that reason. But that was one of the most spiritual experiences I ever had was just really putting it all in the Lord's hands, not even once, but several times, and just going back and talking to a completely different man that was so humbled and so convinced of it all. But that was a great experience for me and a good testimony builder.